Okay.
All right, we're gonna start. In 30 seconds, folks. You all grab your seats.
Hi. Right, it's Melanie.
The last thing we have today is our friends at friends with Deep Sense and Cove. So that's who a lot of you are going to hear from the next little while. I will say I do hope that we are all able to stick around and 5 o'clock when we get over for more the over here. But with all that said, I'm not going to turn things over to.
No, you're actually gonna hand it. Oh.
I'm full of lies. Okay.
Do I need to use the microphone? And behind the things.
Oh, hello, everybody out there.
There you go.
Welcome to the Ocean of Data Challenge, One Port City. We're excited to have you all here today. And I'll just introduce myself quickly. I'm Tanya Lush, and I'm the Director of Workforce at Cove. And I'm going to introduce the event now quickly, but I would like to acknowledge, first of all, that we are on the land of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are all treaty people. So Ocean of Data Challenge, we've been doing this since last fall, and it's under the, how can I say it, partnership of Cove and Deep Sense, and we've brought in PSA and the Port of Halifax on this particular challenge. So we've talked about the Bedford Ferry, we've talked about coastal communities and climate change, and today, as I mentioned, we are talking about the One Port City in this series. So we will be doing more of these throughout the year. So stay tuned if you're a student. You are more than welcome to participate. So this challenge brings together the ocean people together, and we look at ocean data, and it's for ocean partners to share and learn. And particularly our mandate in Workforce at Cove is to attract young people and talent into the industry. So that's why we open up these challenges to post-secondary students. Where am I? No. Enter.
What did I just do?
I don't know.
There we go.
There we go. So I'd like to introduce you to our speakers here this evening. So we have Melanie Nadeau, who is our CEO of Cove. We have Captain Alan Gray, the President and CEO of the Port of Halifax, and Calvin Tan, the Deputy CEO at PSA Halifax. The agenda goes as such. We have speakers, questions and answers, the challenge review, the data review, which will be with EC and IBI group, and then the challenge questions and answers. So what we hope is that you will hear from 3 amazing speakers, leaders in the global ocean logistics and ocean tech space. These 3 people will share lots of interesting information with you. And we will review the process for this challenge and, of course, how you can win cash prizes, young people who are participating in this challenge. So without further ado, I'll quickly introduce Cove. Cove, we are a world-class innovation hub that bring together people, technology, and programs. And I won't say any more than that because my boss is going to talk about that now. Melanie's going to talk about that, and I don't want to take away her speech. So that's who we are at Cove, and Jen's going to come talk about our other guests.
Thank you. I'm from Deep Sense. My name is Jen LaPlante, and we are all about ocean data and ocean AI, and we're a program based out of Dalhousie University with funding from Cove, the province of Nova Scotia, ACOA through the federal government, Ocean Frontier Institute, Dalhousie, and a partner with IBM, and we're really focused on ocean data and ocean AI. You're going to learn more about the Port of Halifax and PSA, so I won't get into them a little too much. We're going to start with the challenge, though, and why we're here. So it's all about a one port city. What does it mean to be a one port city? We have some great students online, as well as some students that are here, and others who are going to watch this recording who have the opportunity to compete in this challenge. Up until recently, there were 2 terminals that were operated by 2 different terminal operators. Well, that isn't the case anymore. PSA operates both. This presents incredible opportunity. You have one port authority, one terminal operator, one rail carrier. There's lots of really great opportunities for all of Halifax to benefit from this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And you'll learn more to be able to help address some of the challenges we put forward. Really, it's thinking about anything related to data and your background and your skills and expertise. Maybe you're in architecture and planning, maybe you're in ocean data, maybe or ocean science or data science or computer science, taking your disciplinary ideas and throwing them at this challenge and this problem. We've always tried to break down our challenges into a few different streams just to give you some context and ideas. And so for this one, we're looking at on the water. So what's the change that happens with the port, its operations, its impact with its vessels? How do you optimize the port and how it operates with having one single terminal operator? When you think about on the terminal, you're going to see there's data that we'll share with you that you can access and download that helps you really understand what happens at the terminal level, how things move around, how vessels operate, all sorts of different pieces. And then around the water. I don't know if anybody's ever walked down Lower Water Street and had a truck drive by. There's lots of impact of movement of goods that happen on our streets, on our rail. So what kind of operations can be consolidated and optimized around the water as well? You're going to find there's other data too around under the water. There's AIS data, which was talked about earlier today, which tracks vessels. There's loads of different things that you can look at to start planning, build an infographic, build a dashboard, build a tool. There's something there that you could kind of play with and build something and help us learn a little. For our speakers today, we're going to start with Melanie Nadeau, as mentioned earlier, and then Captain Alan Gray, and followed by, not last but least, maybe the most chatty of the bunch will be Kelvin Can. We'll see what happens. We might have to give him the gong and get him out of here. Okay, so Melanie, we're going to start with Melanie. We're trying to do our best, obviously, to always make sure that we have great representation of everything that isn't necessarily port and logistics. Here at the pier, we do a lot of talking about ports in terms of containers, and we talk about rail cars and trucks and all these things. There is so much more that happens within that port out there. And so that's why I'm really happy that Melanie's going to be here to chat with us. Melanie started her career first in the Navy. So I think from her perspective, it's very different that she started out on the water. I personally still call them boats, and I'm not a fan of being on the water. So she has a very different perspective of what this world is like. But as an engineer as well, she comes from a different world than me too. She worked for NRC and led a pile of different programs, but then it became this world of energy and renewable energy and efficiency activist and leader in standardizations around renewable energy, and worked very locally for Amira as well before she took the helm of Cove, which is the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship. And so she joined them just as the pandemic was really starting in September 2020, but has guided them to be a fascinating group. So the fact that we have an innovation space on the other side of the water from here that focuses on ocean tech and we focus on ocean logistics, it's an amazing partnership and a really great asset to the city. So I welcome Melanie to come up and have a chat and help us learn a little more about things that aren't the things that are going to be talked about by our next two speakers.
Thank you, Jen. You never know how Jen is going to introduce you. But I like the activist part. And you know, I'm not sure what else I can say, but I'll try my best because you guys did an excellent job of talking about Cove and what we do. I just want to start by thanking Tanya Lush, Ben LaPlante, and Andrew Black for pulling this together, because this is such an important topic. And the other speakers will share the vast scope of work that's required in terms of logistics around ports and marine transportation. I want to ask, and I know some people are online, but want to ask how many people in the room are students? How many people are eligible for money? Maybe is the question. Maybe some hands are up. Okay. Just wanted to ask that question because this morning, and I see a few faces that I saw this morning, but this morning we onboarded 36 interns at Cove who are post-secondary students, which is really exciting. And they're going to work with ourselves, but they're going to work with a multitude of different companies that are involved in ocean tech. So it's really important to have that engagement and this challenge with the team that's pulled this together. It's really important to have that thinking, that innovative spirit, and looking at some of the real life challenges that we have within the sector. As Tanya mentioned, we're a world-leading innovation hub, and we're really focused on high-tech innovation for the sustainability of the oceans. So that's how I like to refer to it. And we're part of Canada's Ocean Tech Cluster. So we are one of the few organizations in Canada that are just specializing in ocean tech. We have, if you looked out the window here, you might be able to see us down the harbor. We're situated on the Dartmouth side, so the other side of the harbor. And we have co-working space, we have workshops, we have a machine shop, we have waterfront, so 2 finger piers, we have marginal wharfs, we have floating docks, and we have access to talent, as I mentioned earlier. We look at talent not only post-secondary, but youth and mid-career professionals. And we're really focused on providing opportunities for new ventures to grow, and that can be new businesses with our incubator on site, the Cove Startup Yard. And I saw Shelley earlier who runs that. I don't know if there she is, the incubator on site. But we're also working with other ventures, which is a combination of multinationals, SMEs, and so on that are building different business ideas. And we're part of that. Our areas of focus are 5 end uses of the ocean sector. So defense and security being one. We had our first Navy vessel at Cove early Monday morning, and last Monday was there for a couple of days. So that was really neat to see. So we have a strong tie to defense. We're also involved in offshore energy, marine transportation, fisheries and aquaculture, and marine tourism. And that kind of just gives you a broad spectrum of all the activity that can take place in a harbor, and a highly active harbor like we have here. And again, we're really focused on commercialization and trying to remove the barriers to commercializing any type of tech that fits within one of those verticals. The type of vessels that you might see come to Cove. So this is a little bit different than what you may see here at the terminals, where you have much larger vessels. We would get a lot smaller vessels. So different types of research vessels, for example, like Coriolis, William Kennedy, some vessels that tend to do research up in the north, in the Arctic during the summer, but get situated with us during the winter. We also have opportunistic vessels that are working on offshore oil and gas, for example, along the Atlantic that come to Cove. And we also have in our floating dock areas, smaller vessels. So everything from rigid hulls, small like a Cape Bretoners and so on, that are doing different research, different applications in the harbor, different testing in the harbor, and ribs. So we have a series of ribs that are hosted at Cove. And actually today, or this last week and a half, and for the next couple of weeks, we're hosting a sandbox with D&D. In fact, we're the host for their large sandbox around corrosion detection. And they're using anything from acoustics to detect corrosion aboard ships to drones to detect corrosion. So it's quite interesting, the vastness of different technology that comes through our door. From a technical program point of view, we also are involved with Smart Buoys, Smart Buoy Atlantic, which is an interesting data source for you. So if you're looking for data sets as you apply your creativity to this challenge, there is an open source data set of 2 buoys and other buoys along the Atlantic that collect different types of data like wave heights, currents, and so on. And the port, in fact, is one of the users of that data. And there are other commercial users of that data. And we also just deployed in the last year the first commercially applied subsea sensor platform, so just off our wharf. And that has about 16 different technologies that are on that platform, collecting sound signals, so different acoustics to see what's going through the harbor, collecting information like conductivity, temperature, depth, and so on. So that's a huge data set that's also, don't know if it will be available for this, maybe we'll work on it. The type of data that may be available for this challenge if it's needed. But again, a big tool to be able to deploy different sensors, different technologies, do some demonstrations, and then look at data, big data, and working with DeepSense on that and how we could use that data from different sources. And then the other piece that I think what we've seen, so Cove, in fact, really only opened its doors in 2018, so we're not that old. But what we're really seeing as a thematic through Cove is businesses that we call ocean enterprises, the new blue economy, which is businesses that are focused around robotics, data, sensors, IT, and they're looking at getting more information out of data observation, more information out of the ocean. So there's definitely been a surge of companies in that area, and in fact, it's become quite a thematic within Cove, and our subsea sensor platform is well situated within that space. One of the areas that, you know, if I could spur your imagination that we're thinking about is the next phase of our subsea sensor platform, which is a sophisticated data point in the harbor. But the idea of having a fully digitally connected harbor down the road where we would have data nodes around the harbor that would be inclusive of our subsea sensor platform, the smart buoys, and other data points where we could actually have a fully interconnected harbor that would allow us to do anything from different types of autonomy on the surface, so different vessels, and maybe Alan might talk about that, but large vessels, using it as a test playground for different tech, also looking at subsea communications. So there's a lot of underwater vehicles, not only at Cove, but that are in development, and subsea communications is very challenging. So using it as an opportunity to develop subsea communications. And then there's a multitude of different applications there. So with that, I think I will leave it there, but I just wanted to really sort of inspire you and give you a sense of other stuff going on in the harbor and the level of activity that's happening in and amongst the port, what the port is doing, but with a lot of other end users that are here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. Second up tonight to share a little bit more with you about the port is Captain Alan Gray. So he started, I'm assuming it was 20 years on sea before he came ashore, and then was the Deputy Harbor Master, then the GM of Operations, and later became the General Manager of the Fremantle Port, but we attracted him to Canada in November of 2019. So Captain Gray moved here and is really focused clearly on innovation within port operations and really developing the Atlantic hub here in Halifax. So we welcome him to share some slides and chat a little. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And I'm going to try and do Halifax Port 101 in a short time frame. And there's so much more we can talk about, but the idea is to give you a sense of the port operation within the city environment, and that should spur your imagination as to what we're asking. So the two grey areas on that are the separation between the two terminals, and I'm sure Kelvin will talk a little bit more about the operational side of those two terminals. You can see on a sort of a peninsula there, the Halifax Peninsula, the two major operational areas of our port are separated by a city. But within that, we actually manage quite a bit of other land, and you're in some of that land here, which has been repurposed for social purposes or our ability to interact with the city in what I would call a buffer zone environment, a place where we can integrate operational activity and community activity together without impacting on each other. And that protects us from an operational point of view, but it also protects the community from and the impacts of the operation. But we try to have businesses and activity in the area that is conducive and helps with what's going on, activates an environment for our community. We have PSA Halifax, which is on the southern end. It's a deep water terminal, not restricted by bridges. So that means that PSA can take the largest of the container vessels, and that's significant for us as an Atlantic gateway. And we call ourselves an Atlantic gateway because we're the only port on the east coast of Canada that can take the largest container ships. And that's also significant from the point that we're just fortunate enough to be on a Great Circle route from Europe across to the North Americas. So they're passing us anyway. So to drop in and call and drop off stuff in Halifax works for them fine. But there's also now PSA Halifax Fairview Cove, which was the old series terminal. It is restricted by 2 bridges. So there's a limitation on what we can do up there. But it still takes a significant amount of cargo that comes through this port, and it still provides a valuable service to the gateway port. And in fact, now that PSA own both, there's opportunities for optimisation, which I'm sure Kelvin will talk about. Why are ports important? And I think sometimes we see it here and we just ignore it. If you're the community, the only time it really jumps into your attention is if it becomes an inconvenience, less so when you realise what it's doing. But 4.37 billion in economic output. You know, that's a significant output for Nova Scotia. I mean, we're a federal body and, you know, but we provide most of our economic output directly into this municipality and this province. And so, you know, with 19 container lines connecting us to 150 countries, we are a gateway for this province and Atlantic region to the rest of the world. But not only from the point of cargo, from the point of jobs, intellectual property, knowledge. This activity that we do in the pier has global connections. Our connections with ports across the world allow us to transport the innovation that happens in this space to ports across the world. So we are a gateway not only for physical items, but also intellectual items. Last year, second year of COVID, and it was mentioned how Melanie sort of hit COVID. I came here in November 2009 and walked into COVID. The cruise ships we saw the other day, that was the first cruise ships I've seen since being in the port. So, so it was unique for me. Everybody saw it as the return of cruise. I saw it as the start of cruise for me. But on a containerised point of view, we put through 595,000. That was a record year. We almost topped 600,000. That sounds a lot. I'm sure Kelvin can tell you about Singapore. That's probably half of what they're doing in a day. For us, it's a significant amount. And we even have our non-containerised cargo that's coming through there. So break bulk cargo, ro-ro cargo. All of that has to move through the city in some form. It all has an impact. The ships that are coming here have an impact. Noise, emissions, particulate matter. So, but we also have a positive impact in the sense that we create jobs, we create economic output. So our mantra on sustainability is about how do we balance that? The province talks about wanting to grow and create more jobs. The city talks about having more people and more immigration. You can't do that without jobs, and the port is a centre for jobs. Kelvin will tell you how he wants more cargo going through his terminal. One of the biggest drivers for cargo is people and demand for products. He can't get that unless the city grows. So that both parties need each other. So how do we grow together without impacting each other? How do we make sure that the operations in the port aren't inhibited? And how do we make sure the growth in the port doesn't impact on our communities? It can be done. So we are fortunate. Our import and exports is balanced. That's a great thing from this side of the state. On the west coast, there's quite a large imbalance between import and export. We're quite balanced, which helps us in the rail provision. You can see Europe and Asia are our biggest markets, and particularly the west coast of Asia is significant. We just opened up an Indian service. It was the first direct call from India to a Canadian port. And now we're starting to talk about a service from Turkey across to Halifax. So these are new services opening up new markets. Cruise we were getting 190 vessels just before we had the impact of COVID. We expect to be just over the 150 vessels. The capacity will be less. The vessel that you saw recently come in, she was a 4,000 capacity, but only had 1,500 passengers on it. So we're dealing with, the complexity of the return of crews, but that has its own impacts on the community. 10,000 on a 5-ship day, we could have 10,000 people wandering waterfront, and whilst they're spending money, they're also just taking up space. We have all the tours that they're doing and all the buses that have to get through the city. And quite often what we have is buses are returning to the cruise ships at the same time the city's trying to evacuate all the workers. So all these things have an impact, but again, a very large economic impact on the community is cruise. So we have global connectivity. That's an important factor, and something we can use and grow on. We have comprehensive plans in dealing with growth in cargo, growth in cruise. How do we manage the land? How do we take that transition to digitalisation? Because optimising our assets through digitalisation is one way of avoiding very large spends of $500, $600, $800 million in infrastructure too early, because someone has to pay for it. If I spend $800 million on infrastructure, it ends up coming back to you as the people that are buying in the supply chain to pay for that $800 million worth of infrastructure. So how do we bleed that infrastructure to its maximum so that we actually get volume coming through that pays for it rather than the supply chain paying for it? So just what's happening at the moment, we have a marine container examination facility which speeds up the processing of containers through, because not every container, but at-risk containers have to be inspected. The National Trade Corridor Fund is about moving trucks off downtown and over to rail. So how do we reduce the impact of trucks in the city? The Collaborative Decision-Making Initiative is about integrated planning between the city, ourselves, and the province. So how do we get improved decision-making around our infrastructure spends? How do we collaborate together, maybe combine some of our projects so that instead of spending 100 million each, we spend 200 million between the three of us, but actually get a better result than we would have if we'd gone individually. And our 50-year master plan will come out this year, where you'll see we've looked at the infrastructure needs for the next 50 years. And we know that we can do it within our footprint. We know that we don't have to expand our footprint, but we just have to get smarter on the way we do things. Our community volume involvement, sustainability, as I said, is mandatory in the way we think. Everything we do in our operations, everything we're doing in our planning has to take a sustainability lens to it. We've set up our Port Community Liaison Committees to engage with the community, to tell them warts and all what we're up to and get their feedback and input. So this is important for us as we move forward. We set up the pier for collaboration with our partners and the ecosystem that's around. It's the intent of the pier to solve complex problems that we couldn't do ourselves. And we can do that with our partners. We are part of the Atlantic Hydrogen Alliance, but we're also part of the Global Ports Hydrogen Collaboration, so that we can standardise and work together to get hydrogen as an alternative renewable fuel. For us, there's often demand about exports. For us as a port, it's more about how do we sway the industry to use renewable fuels quicker than what they would normally. And that's about us having the infrastructure and us having the facilities or the product to be able to provide them. The challenge out there in the industry is, again, it's a part of the industry that's moving at a rapid rate. There's new technology every day. There's new discussions. In fact, I swear the 4 shipping lines sat down together and said, well, I'll take methanol if you take ammonia, and you take pure hydrogen, and I'll take something else. And one of us will win at the end, and then we'll all swap over to that when we get there. Because at the moment, as a port, we're watching multiple fuels going out there and different industries working at it. We don't know where they're going to land. But our bet's probably it'll be a hydrogen derivative of some sort. So, and that's a quick 101 of how the port operates, but you can see it has a very close link to the community. And so whatever you do, come up with as ideas must take that into account. Thank you.
And it does say questions, and we will come to that. But first, Kelvin. All right. So you have a long list of academic and educational achievements that range from many academic institutions globally. So I won't list them all. How's that? But Kelvin joined PSA in 2001 and has essentially had a pile of different roles in finance and operations across Europe and Asia. And first came to Canada in BC to run the Ashcroft terminal. Is that correct? And then moved here in 2019. Very big years, 2019 and 2020 in the marine industry in Atlantic Canada. So he's come on as deputy CEO of what is now two terminals for one operator here, and he's essentially going to drive all of the strategic value you can get out of PSA. So welcome and come and join us.
I probably don't need to mic if I want to hear me.
You got for the camera to have your.
You want me to do that as well?
You have slides. Do you want your slides?
Yes.
Do you want me to flick them as you
Yeah,
go?
you can. All right, we'll do the tag team. Okay, so I'll tell you everything about PSA. In fact, I joined PSA in the late 90s. So I've never worked anywhere else. Go. So this is PSA. So PSA International is a worldwide organization. We call ourselves a leading force in terminals. So depending on how you count, we are the largest. So headquartered in Singapore, second flagship in Belgium, 61 terminals in 36 countries and over 40,000 employees. In fact, as of last month, this is no longer valid because we've just acquired another international organization a month ago, and we added another 133 locations. So the 61, scratched out the 61, added another 133, so that's close to 200 locations right now. Our focus is always on long-term strategic assets. Most places where we have, in fact, all places that we have invested, we've never left. So we'll never leave. You can drag us out, kicking and screaming, we'll never get out. Our emphasis has always been on places where we can add value, be it using optimization, using technology, or doing something clever. So we rarely go into some place where it's a little bit boring or. So PS is North American journey, as Manj mentioned. So before 2018, we had nothing. We had no PSA. So I think I would like to think we've done pretty well. We've moved pretty quickly. I started at Ashcroft Terminal, which was the inland rail hub in BC, so also serving Vancouver. And one great feature has both CN Rail and CP Rail on the same side. Know the history of Canadian Rail. That's a key, a critical point to make. In Halifax in 2018, as Captain Alan Gray has mentioned, great location, serves the Europe, Asia, and Caribbean markets, and immediately is what I call mega vessel rates. So it's more than 16,000 feet size. And last but not least, we've also got something in Penn, Philadelphia, and that's very niche, serving specialty segments like food and coaching needs. In fact, I think that one tiny not so big terminal serves about 40% of US's strawberries, for example. So we've got something special going on there. So here you can see the map where we have all our locations, and we've also started to color code them because we're starting to do different things. So the reds, traditional container terminals, but the different colors for the new stuff that we're trying to do.
I'm really sorry, the people online can't hear you, so you're gonna have to come stand over here. I'll move out of the way though, I'm sorry. Well, I must be picking up from my laptop versus.
Okay, that's fine.
Arrow down though.
Okay. So just to put things in perspective, so PSA Singapore, that's our headquarters. So 53 container berths, so a lot more key cranes than the 4 or 5 you see here. So close to 200 key cranes, 40 million TEUs. But in Singapore, we are already creating the terminal of the future. We have already started building it. In fact, the first phase is already open as of January this year, and that's adding another 65 million TEUs. So if you add up 65 plus 40, that's about 100 million TEUs. you put that in perspective, current Halifax capacity is about 1 million TEU. So 100 times. It needs some time to ponder the scale of the differences here over there. PSA Belgium, our second flagship, is the largest single terminal in Europe, MPAT terminal at Antwerp. That's 10 million TEU capacity. Or in fact, it's 13 million TEU capacity. In fact, again, this is a little bit outdated. I think the latest number is 11 million TEUs that we handled last year. So this slide is actually the exciting slide. So apart from the boring stuff of lifting containers from A to B, we would like to think of how to do it in a smarter way. So we call this solutions. And I think some of the other speakers have already alluded to this today. Someone from Essentia talked about knitting, right? So I really like that word knitting. So we're really knitting things together. For example, investing in inland rail hubs, forming partnerships with Duisport. Duisport is a huge inland rail terminal in Germany. Looking at things like the China, Europe New Silk Road. I mean, the New Silk Road is actually exactly the same as the old Silk Road, right? The one with the Marco Polo connection. Of course, on top of that, it's not just physical, it's a digital layer that we've got to play with to do things in a way smarter way. So we have a few products that we have been rolling out and developing, either by ourselves, but all with different industry partners. So we call it Callista, Crimson Logic, customs integration, big item in many countries. PortNet, a port community platform for data sharing. And you heard one of my colleagues today, Robson, talk about the importance of data sharing, and PSA Box. So in Singapore, we also have what we call our internal VC. So we do invest in tech startups as well in Singapore. And so BDP International, that's the exciting new company that we have invested in, which is a US-based logistics provider that has, like I said, added another 133 offices worldwide for PSA. So now zooming back home to Halifax. So here you have seen that picture quite a lot today. PSA Halifax North and South. So we call it Fairview Cove Terminal and Atlantic Hub. Since PSA's investment in Halifax in about 2.5 years ago, so we've successfully done a terminal expansion, key extension. We've added new equipment, as you've seen, new key cranes and equipment being added. There's also been new customers, as well as new trade routes being opened up. For example, the direct India connection right now, which we've never had a Canada-India direct connection. So now we do, and you saw it first in Halifax. Of course, new jobs created at all levels, and close collaboration with the Port Authority, close collaboration with other players, everyone else within the city, including the city, but other institutions as well, like Cove and many others. Deep integration as well with the NTCF project within the city, both for the port infrastructure as well as for the larger downtown traffic and rail fluidity that we are working together with. And last but not least, environmental targets. We have very aggressive climate change targets of 50% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So these are very aligned with the best of the best. So we definitely want to put our money where our mouth is. Just some pictures over here. Container operations is something that we keep talking about. We talk about boxes, but the rest of the industries still exist. There are brick bulk operations, there are ro-ro operations, ro-ro being the cars and the trailers. There's a huge segment of rail operations, refrigerated cargo, we call it reefers, storage and the like. I want to spend just a few more minutes here talking about the market. So as Halifax, we think about ourselves as serving Halifax or Nova Scotia. And then if we think a little bit more, we think of ourselves serving the rest of Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or PEI or Newfoundland. However, we are also a huge gateway for the rest of Canada. So there's a lot of shipments here that are destined to and from Montreal or Toronto. And then further into US Midwest, Chicago, Michigan, there's a lot of connections for us into these parts of North America, and a lot more that could potentially be harnessed. So we have seen a growing market share, due to some global market features. For example, a gradual shift from China, away from China to Southeast Asia, to India, as we see some of the factories move to Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia or India. I mean, arguably India has a lot of potential as well. If India has an excess of 1 billion, I think probably now 1.5 billion population. However, if we look at Halifax itself, we are still very, very tiny compared to Montreal, Vancouver, Prince Rupert, Seattle, you name it, LA, New York. These ports are way bigger than what Halifax is today. Of course, there is still St. John in New Brunswick that is kind of like within our region. So I think for us, we do have to think about our positioning to compete against these regional competitors as a hub. So the development of Halifax as to a hub status, the increasing size of vessels, as vessel sizes get larger and larger, the customers require hubs that are able to physically meet these requirements. And like we mentioned before, that's why we're investing in, to enable Halifax to be at the top of the capabilities for the market requirements. Then when we think back to what's important for Halifax, what's important for Nova Scotia, as the Port of Halifax becomes a hub and becomes an important hub, you will find an increasing number of customers, increasing number of connections coming, going in and out of here. What does this mean? It means that for us in Halifax, we have that great leverage capabilities. We're not just serving ourselves, we're serving the world, we're serving the rest of the country, we're serving the rest of the continent. And this is really something that underpins I would say maybe the level of luxury that we are enjoying over here. I mean, most of the people that don't know Halifax very well, myself included before I moved here, was the level of services and amenities and the level of restaurants and bars that we have here relative to the perceived size of Halifax. And that is because of the leverage. And a certain analogy would be Singapore, where I come from, where Singapore is a tiny country. You couldn't drive from one end to the other. We're only 64 kilometers wide. So it's a tiny country, but yet we are able to leverage multiple times, not 2 times, not 4 times, but 10 times, even 100 times to reach that really mega hub status. So it is possible to be able to leverage many times. And when that happens, not only does your industry really get a huge boost, but every single company, if you wanted to ship something, in and out, if the ships were already here, if the services were already here, the incremental cost to you is so small, as opposed to if you were not a hub and then you have to physically travel to another hub. So that really spurs industry, really spurs economic growth. So here are some of the pictures, underpinning some of the things I mentioned, where our market is our immediate market, our extended market, and then you need to think about arguably New York and the US Midwest and Toronto and Boston are arguably our main competitors. So this is what I was talking about in terms of the support for the local economy, where we can have that leverage. So these are all the brand names that you see, and they're all being served by the port. Just some more statistics here for the Europe market, the Asia market, and the Caribbean market that we have strong connections to. And that's it. Do I have some more pictures here? That's it. So in conclusion, we've talked about PSA International, about being a global company and a focus on supply chain solutions. We talked about the 2 terminals, Atlantic Hub and Fairview Cove. We talked about opportunities for optimization, and perhaps I want to break it down. We can optimize within each terminal. We can optimize across both terminals, but we might also want to think about optimizing where the two terminals interconnect, where there are connection points between the two terminals, and then with all other interconnecting parties, for example, the rail, for example, the rest of the port, the marine services, or the city, other parts of the city. And then another point I wanted to just throw out here is what are the advantages or disadvantages for the two terminals being either similar or different? For example, if both of them had similar features, then could it be an advantage because you could have economies of scale, or you could mix and match on a dynamic basis? Or if you had differences, then could you then think about differentiating the service offerings between the two terminals? We talked about a little bit about opportunities, the market position, the competition versus the regional players. And with the scale, if we build up the scale, we will be able to build new products and inroads to new markets, or to capitalize on some of the markets that are actually available to us. And primarily we talk about US Midwest, we talk about Canadian, the rest of the Canadian market. So importance of ports, I think Captain Alan Gray has already mentioned quite a lot of that as an underlying economic growth driver, as well as creating tremendous leverage for us as consumers, but also for the local industry. That's it. Thank you.
I feel like we could turn this into days of education personally, but going back to all of the things that you just heard from our three great speakers, go back to your challenge of the one port city. So what difference does this make? What does it make for Halifax? Opportunities, everything that was just touched on. Explore any of those topics as long as you use one piece of publicly available data. It could be lots of it or a little bit of it. From a data review standpoint, there's a tiny URL we created, and all of the data that was just referenced, you're going to find everything from details about the underwater Stella to the Smart Atlantic buoy to truck fluidity, which you're going to learn about, and some other pieces around cargo and vessels and times. And there's lots of terms that I've learned this week that are fascinating. So we do have, Raul, where are you? All right, so I just lost my phone. And Simon's online. Yep. All right. So Raul, so you are, I'm going to tell you what you are apparently, Director of Intelligence Systems at IBI Group. So in the data challenge, there's a little bracket IBI beside the IBI data. So you can easily find it. With 17 years of experience with intelligent transportation. Oh, this is interesting. You've got lots of advisory services, like this is your world. So you're gonna share a little with us about some of your data.
Well, great to be here and to share a bit about what we've been doing with the port. So it's quite simple. We had seen that trucks that were coming to the port had RFID technology embedded in them for traveling around the area. We're well known for doing tolling within the region. So you can thank us for taking away the tolls in Nova Scotia recently. So that was one of the efforts we did. But that RFID technology is what's being fed into the truck terminal system, which gives minimum, median, and maximum time ranges for going into the port on approach, entering the port, and then leaving the port. So that data is readily available to you as part of this challenge. I do want to share something that's an interesting note as to the power of data. So being embedded in smart cities, IBI is very much in developing cities of the future. And when we worked with big data players out there, we found that when you look at different data sets and try to compare them, you could find some interesting metrics. So one example was in New York City, Dunkin' Donuts at the time was looking for a different place to set up a new shop. And what they noticed was their data analytics company had researched criminal statistics of where pickpocketings were occurring was actually where the most sales were occurring. And it was because of the inherent media movement of traffic, people around that location was also where pickpocketers were going. So that was inherently where they decided to land their next shop. So sometimes when you're looking at the data sets that you have available to you, cross-reference them and thinking outside of the box is what we really encourage to come up with some innovative ideas.
Amazing, thank you. Thank you. And Simon is also here. So I'm just trying to think of how I do this. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, genius. Oh gosh, that's like not an attractive jeepers. Close. Let me close this. Here you go, Simon.
Am I on now? Does everybody see me?
Okay, keep talking so I can find where the output is of a laptop.
There you go. Okay, I'll keep talking. I'll just say, while you still can't see me, maybe I'll just say good evening, everyone here from Copenhagen, Denmark. My name is Simon. I'm the CEO of EC, and we provide all kinds of data for the container shipping industry, including the data that you'll be looking at now. So I understand we only have a few minutes. I'll try and keep it short and sweet as to what we do and how you can use it. And then obviously at the end of this session or later on during the 2 weeks you're more than welcome to reach out to me and or my team here in Copenhagen to ask about the data set. Jennifer, am I still on or am I speaking into nothingness here?
You're good. Everybody can see and hear you.
Okay, awesome. Excellent. Good stuff. I can't see anyone, but I hope you all see me. So basically what we do at EC is we monitor global liner networks around the world. We monitor container vessels as they move around, and then we predict their movements. And that allows the users such as the Port of Halifax and PSA, obviously to optimize, amongst other use cases, to optimize the assets they have, the berth, the cranes, and obviously the gate, the yard, and the whole supply chain as it moves along. And what you'll be looking at during this hackathon is essentially a list of container vessel arrivals into Halifax from January 2020 through the end of March 2022, if I'm not mistaken, by terminal. And just very briefly about the nature of what you're looking at. Global liner shipping is organized into so-called liner networks. They're very similar to the bus lines that you know, so driving around Halifax and Toronto. And so you have to imagine that, for example, you'll be looking at a service called PSW3, Pacific Southwest Pacific Southwest from the Southeast Asia. And what it does is it connects South and Southeast Asia to the North American East Coast, including in this case, the Port of Halifax on a liner network. And these services all have names. You'll forgive us the odd looking names, the text strings that you'll be looking at in the data set, but they do actually make sense. All you have to know is that carriers work together in alliances like the airlines do. And so each carrier will market the service, this bus line under different names, and that's what you're looking at. Similar to buses and airlines, you have the liner services. They all run on a predefined frequency. So for a bus, you might run your bus every hour, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock departure from Halifax Central Station. In this case, you're looking at liner services that will usually run on what we call a weekly frequency. So they'll have what is called a berth window into Halifax every, say, Saturday morning from 8 o'clock to 1800 and so on. Again, usually on a weekly frequency, but some services will be deviating from that. And you'll be then looking at two dates fields. One is the pro forma date, so that is the scheduled date. It's called the pro forma date in our lingo. Pro forma date means the date the vessel should have arrived there. So again, that would be the Saturday 0800. This is when Emma Maersk, or what do we have, Ocean X Sanderling should have arrived into Halifax. And then you're looking at an actual date, which is the time that it did actually arrive. And you, of course, can deduct one from the other, and then you have a delay. There's something in a field called event status, which means what happened to this event. The main things you need to know there is that an inducement is, terminology-wise, an inducement is an ad hoc call that happened that was not scheduled. So it doesn't have a standard date. It wasn't expected, but it came in. The vessel decided to come into Halifax, maybe on its way to North America. While an omission is exactly the opposite, a call that was expected to happen, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. There might have been a storm around Halifax, or the vessel was late, or whatever happened here. And those, I believe those event statuses are listed out in the documentation you're being given. So I think for me, that's kind of the very high level of it. You can look at a number of different things in this data set. Personally, what I think is interesting to look at, of course, is the number, what we think as a company here in Copenhagen, is the number and scope and geography of services over time. How has Halifax's ability, for example, to serve Southeast Asia or to serve the Caribbean, how has that changed over time? Have they gotten more bus lines from Southeast Asia or fewer? And then one other thing that's very, very interesting to look at right now is the delays over time. Again, container shipping is an odd industry, but a lot of things have happened since a vessel got stuck in the Suez Canal at the middle of last year. And one of those things that have happened is that delays have gone through the roof. So those are some of the trends you could be looking at in the data. But again, I don't know how you specifically will want to use the data. That's entirely up to you during this hackathon, but you're most welcome to reach out. I think that was about it, Jennifer, from my side. I think I more or less stayed within the 2 minutes. Are we clear?
There's a great deal of sun coming in right now. It's the beauty of this building, but it changes over the course of the seasons. That's fantastic. Thanks very much. I think we really appreciated that. To that point, we tried to create data dictionaries for all of the different data sources. So there is one currently saved. You just mentioned there's one that I was lacking to add, and it might have been the inducement. I have to double check or an omission. So I'm gonna go add that now.
Cool.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to go back and share my screen. So we won't see your face anymore. I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you for this. And I didn't do your intro. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked by looking at myself. That's what happens. You know, when someone shares their screen when you're in a meeting and you're like, don't, you're sharing me. It's that kind of thing,
There you
right? Okay, there we go. Let's
Have
finish
everyone,
this up.
everyone.
Thank you. We're not done. Don't worry. Okay, let's wrap it up there really fast, right? Your rules. You must be an Atlantic Canadian Institute student enrolled in currently or have graduated within the past 12 months. That will be a requirement, and we will check it if you win. You can participate if you're not. That's great. It just means you won't win a prize. Your submission, it could be a technology solution, a visualization, a prototype. Address some of the problems that we talked about. Really, it's that we want to make sure that you have something that includes a bit of data. If you're going to use someone's data, it's not proprietary data that you're sharing, that's private data. You actually have the right to be able to use and share that. All of the data we've shared is publicly available, for example. Competitors, so you can do it by yourself or a team of up to 5, doesn't really matter. You have to submit your thing online. You're going to find within the data, there's a in that bit.ly or that tiny URL, you'll find the details. Again, part-time, full-time student, bring in a friend, whatever you prefer. We're going to do a video submission. So instead of having everybody join, because we know people are working and life and all that, you have to do a submission online. Your video can only be up to 3 minutes. Just upload it, for example, to YouTube. That's the goal, and a private link. We don't necessarily want it to be public. No one has to see it. You're just going to send us the private link, and you're going to send us a document with a summary about your team, and you're going to tell us a little about in your document. You'll see the form when you go there. One very lovely diagram for you to see all of your key milestones for this. Next week at this time, we're going to have a Zoom call. Hop on if you have questions, and we'll try to dictate. There were pilot questions that came in as well. We'll do our best to follow up with a FAQ that we give you a link that will just add directly into that data document that you currently have access to. And then one last wrap up.
So we have fabulous prizes, as you can see, 750, 500, 500, 500. So I would suggest that's great money for young people. All right. So there's your timeline. There's the schedule. Keep in mind, especially your submission. So team, I should go over here because you're high online. So there will be an open Zoom call where you can jump on and email any questions. The team concept submissions and videos must be submitted and be eligible for presentation. We have fabulous judges and they will review all submissions and decide on winners, and the winners will be announced. And our judges are from PSA, Cove, and from the Port of Halifax as well. And I should mention that you must demonstrate one form of data. So for example, it could be an infographic, it could be a visualization, a plan, a technology solution, whatever you decide in your presentation, but that must be in there for sure. Jen, did I say everything I was supposed to say? Good luck, everybody. That's it. Thanks. That's a wrap. For those of you who are online, we will post this online with the Zoom links. You can go back, you can share it with friends, you can revisit. And if you have any questions, send us an email, and we're really happy and looking forward to your submissions. Thanks for joining.